Man, it's so good. Good to see those that were here the first time around, but those that are new. We're actually about to hit in January year 30 of merits, and what a ministry that you've had, and and we have been through so many different experiences. One day that we told a couple stories. We'll tell a few stories this time around. They're always pre-approved, already solved problems. Because what we want to say is like we are always right. We're always growing in our relationships and our friendships and our marriages. Parenting. We're never there. Grandparenting. We're always doing the next thing, learning the next thing, and so that's part of our encouragement. It's like part of the development of where God wants us is we're never there, but we're always working on where He's leading us. And so truly, as we're talking about, as John Mark was mentioning in the first session with us, or keynote was, it is God's wisdom that we're always seeking. Ours is so limited. It can be based on experiences, good and bad, and we might get there, but we're not going to get to where God truly wants us to be as individuals, as husband or wife, mom, dad, grandparents, or mentee. So we're always leaning into what God wants for us and the heart that He wants us to have. So many different things that we could talk about in this one, but we're going to jump in today.
Yeah. So just to review, we talked last time about unspoken rules, which are those like the word says, unspoken. You're not talking about them a lot of times. Rules that family systems have. So an example of one would be, don't let dad get mad. Or if mom's feeling nervous, then we're all supposed to just do whatever mom wants. Okay, so those are examples, and every family has them, and they can be different. And learning the unspoken rules of the family is part of how husband and wife start to mesh together. We also talked about first order change and second order change. First order change is a lot about behavior change only. Second order change is we're talking about changing like the entire family patterns. So we start with first order change, and then we're moving into second order change. We talked a little bit about trash and recycle. So something that you're going to trash, or maybe unspoken rules or family patterns that are not helpful. They might have been helpful at one point in your family system's life, but now they're not helpful, so you're going to go ahead and trash those. And then recycle. Recycle is something you're going to reuse over and over again. So those are the helpful things that help our families to continue to move in a positive direction. So, yeah, go ahead.
Just give it a practical example of how they're sneaky sometimes too, right? Some of these things are they're just there, and then all of a sudden we have kids, and then we begin to parent them. We begin to have expectations without knowing we have expectations, because we really look in the mirror and go, hey, I'm a pretty good parent. I mean, I was pretty sure I was the best dad on earth until they started talking to me. Right. And they started like actually having conversations with me. And I was actually sharing this earlier. It kind of reminded me of one of those sneaky things. And, also something else that was just really important is even playing basketball. I'm pointing at this guy because those don't know this is my dad. So everything's his fault. So, we played basketball a lot. I have two older brothers, and so we played 2-on-2. And there was times in which somebody would go, that was a foul. And then the other person would be like, that was a foul. Are you serious? I mean, like, if you called a foul, then you're a sissy, right? So, I mean, if you could see it, I mean, if there was like blood coming out of your nose, then you could call something maybe, right? And so that was just kind of one of those, basketball is really important, being really tough. I mean, all the types of things. Well, later on, I had kiddos, and my son, I know this is interesting, but my son's 6'1", right? He's a thick boy, right? And I'm thinking, yes, right? I mean, this is my basketball player, and so then I don't even say these days, right? I'm just like, okay, this guy has. I'm like, he's gonna play. I never played. I know it's a surprise, but He's I'm gonna live through him. I don't know if you guys ever had these types. So, but it was never. I don't think I ever overtly said that out loud. We went to a smaller Christian school there in Bryan Falls Station area. Started playing basketball, and of course, after every basketball game, guess what I would do? What would be normal? I would give me suggestions. That's normal, right? I mean, and every parent, good dad does that because I want to mentor up my son, and he may go in the NBA. Who knows, right? And and so we go in his sophomore year. He comes to me and he says, on the way home, I'm like, all right, I got my list. I won't say that. I'm like, all right, here's some things that I saw the game that I need to improve. He's like that. It's like every time you tell me, hey, I got something for you to work on, just guess what, you're telling that I'm not doing a good job. What planet are you from? Because that's not even close to what I'm meaning, right? And there was an expectation saying that you have to be better, you have to be better, you have to be better. And there was a part of me that wanted for him, without even saying it, there's some kind of something within me that needed for him to be really good and pass the ball. Now that was never an expectation from my parents, probably for obvious reasons, but there was this expectation, like for some reason, that I wanted the best for my kids, right? I mean, that's really the underneath motivation. I wanted them to be really good at what they want to do, right? But enjoy what I wanted to do. So all these things kind of come in, they sneak in, they create expectations, and so they're just sneaky sometimes. So this is the work to do. No matter if you're at the beginning or you're in the grandparent stage, there's always so much work that we can be attending to know what's going on inside of self.
Yeah.
Which really goes into a lot of these.
Yeah. So in the last session, we really kind of laid a groundwork so that we have like a common sense of vocabulary and understanding. And in this session, we're going to talk about some more practical things. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is parent roles: the teacher, the coach, and then the counselor. So we're going to start with the teacher. And in this, your role is to instruct, to set the example, to guide them. You're teaching them everything from like manners to math, okay? Now the notes in your notebook, we could spend time making sure that we have the exact words that's supposed to be in there. Look in the back. We're just gonna keep flowing, okay? Okay, so this is the early childhood through elementary years, okay? Depending on your child, right? It's always dependent on the child. So that looks like little Johnny is not picking up his toys. And so we are telling little Johnny, okay, we're going to show you how to pick up your toys, and we're helping him, and we're doing it with them, okay? So this is the teacher. A teacher, when kids go to school, what's the expectation when they get there? Do they make the rules? What do kids do at school? They what? Just obey. Yeah, it's time to obey. We're going to follow the system that's already in place, and you're going to kind of fall in line, okay? Because we're the teachers, okay? So that's the first level. Now we roll into a coach, okay? So, it's really great. You have this baby, and you have all these expectations for this child, and you're so excited, and you're ready just to do things right, and you don't realize that they're going to mold you just as much as you mold them, right? And you're going to be learning lessons from them just like they're learning from you. Part of the lesson that we have to learn as parents is changing our roles, right? So it's really easy to be a teacher because you do what I say. That's our relationship together. But then they start to get bigger. Doesn't quite work the same way. So then we move into this coach role where I'm the motivator, the skill builder, the encourager. So you think about, for playing, I'll mention basketball again. If we're playing basketball and I'm the coach and my player cannot make the basket, a coach is not going to go onto the court You know, it's my vocabulary. Coach is not going to go onto the court and take the ball.
This is literally like a growth points, right? So hit the basketballs on the field.
And they're not going to take the ball and be like, okay, here, you see it over there. You don't know how to do it, so I'm going to go ahead and play in the game and I'm going to shoot it for you. That's not what happens, right? No, because they're a coach. We're not teaching. We're not in practice mode. We're in a game. We're coaching, okay?
And even right there, so we're about to go on to the next one, but even right there, going from teacher to coach, what do you feel, what do you think, what are the problems that tend to happen right there when you begin to go from teacher to coach?
I still want to do it for them.
I still want to do that for them.
They don't do it on our timeline.
Yeah, my timeline.
Let it go. Yeah, that's let it go.
A problem, letting go, control.
Sometimes they still want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, big teaching. Yeah, big teaching.
I think the coach is more on the sidelines and like more, not all the time, but mostly. And we want to be in the middle of the field.
I often watch, which our kids didn't do, the church, the sports at churches. Upwards, the guy. And sometimes, when your kiddo falls down, right, or they get hurt in the middle of the game, right, we want to run out there. And so there's so many, that's an example of like, why would I not go, they're 4 years old, why would I not go there? Oh, all of a sudden when they're, 10 or 12 years old, and then all of a sudden my heart, my love for my child has not changed, right? So I still want to go do that. And that's where part of the conflict goes in, right? So.
No. And there's a movement between the levels. So you have like teacher, coach, sort of a teacher, coach, but you're trying to trend down to like, I'm moving you into this coaching place where if you're at school and you're wondering, oh, would it be okay for me to do this? They're not texting you to say, would it be okay for me to do this? They know that you've told them, I'm proud of the choices that you're making, and then they're going to make a choice for themselves, right? So I think that, just side note, I think that's what I've heard a lot of parents say they hate it that there's not cell phones at school. And part of that is because they don't have the input into their child's little world, and those children are having to figure out, hey, if I have a problem, I'm going to have to look for a trusted adult in my life that's not my parent, and I'm going to have to get my courage up, and I'm going to have to go over there and say, hey, I need help. And that's a big learning curve for some of our students now, because parents have always been there. Here, let me just text the front office, and then they solve it for them, right? So a teacher, a lot of times, is solving the problem or teaching you how to solve the problem, whereas a coach, you're watching the game and you might go, oh, why are you doing that? But you're not going to tell them that until after the game's over and you're having a teaching moment, right? And so it's a hard transition to watch your child fall down, but then struggle to get up. But we do it all the time. You think about an infant that's crawling on the ground. If every single time they attempted to pull up, if they attempt to pull up and they fall over, if we pick them up every single time, how are they going to learn how to walk? How are they going to develop those muscles? They're going to have a really hard time. It's going to delay their growth and development if we pick them up every single time. So sometimes what seems like, oh, I want to help them because I love them so much, is actually robbing them of the opportunity to learn through that. Children are meant to mess up. They're meant to mess up, and that's why they need us to be there to help them to learn how to do the next thing, but they don't need us to do it for them, right? Because we've already done it. We've already been children. It's their turn to be children.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one. Oh, wrong computer. Thanks. The next one's counselor. The counselor is a listener, a supporter, a consultant. This transition, I would say, is one of the very hardest ones.
Yeah.
a teenager's job is to not live with you forever. They are working. I love our son, right? He's 26. I love him. But when he was 18, I didn't need him to continue to live in our home, right? It's not his job. When he was 21, I did not need him to, I don't need him to continue to depend on me that way because I am not the end goal for him, right? And so if I would have said, oh, definitely don't look for a job, Andrew. Don't look for a job. I'll just support you forever. How is that going to maybe in the short term feel good to him? But in the long term, it's like I'm crippling him, right? Because he needs to feel that pressure to go ahead and go and make a living so that he can hit the next milestone for himself. How do you guys see problems between moving towards this coach to this counselor?
There has to be trust on both ends of that situation.
It's almost a time to have experiences to invest in that trust and, to build up on that trust. Yeah.
It's hard to listen and not immediately grasp.
Really.
And not to what?
Or Haley writes.
Ah, yes. Is that listening though? Probably not. Yeah. Because if I'm listening to Shaun and I'm really thinking of a rebuttal, I'm not really listening to him.
It's hearing.
I'm hearing him and I'm really thinking I am good at arguing, right? And I'm like, I'm getting my rebuttal together. As soon as you stop talking, I'm going to slam you with it. But that's not listening to him. So one thing that we have learned is when our adult children call us and they say they want us to listen to their thing, is that we take notes and we're just like writing down a few words. So then when they stop talking, we can say, so what I heard is that na, 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 na. And you're just reflecting back, almost like a mirror, reflecting back to them what they said. And it's amazing. Sometimes they will say, wow, you just said so many good things. Like, thank you so much. And I'm like, I didn't say anything. But I was with them in that moment. And so if you just have a little sticky note and just write down just a few words that they're saying so that when they stop talking, you can reflect back, because that's what we want, right? We don't really want our problems solved when we talk to somebody. We just want to know, like, hey, I need somebody to hear this with me.
I think the consistent part that we have to remember that in each stage, and this is, I think, the difficulty even for me as a parent, that when they do a behavior, and I've said, don't do that behavior 8,000 times, and they keep doing that, then surely they're disrespecting, right? So I have to be aware of my stuff, right? Because when they do that, it's 100% against me. I feel that at times, right? So being aware of my stuff and being aware that each stage needs us as parents to listen. So my oldest daughter, that's 24, I think this was 2 years ago, we did a dad-daughter retreat for a church. And so it was real neat. I talked with the daughters, she talked with the dads, and we kind of flipped and back and forth. And we did this exercise where we had all the daughters, this is 7-year-olds to 18-year-olds, daughters, right? So all the daughters you had a younger group and the older group, and the daughters sat in a circle facing out, with the dads on the outside of the circle facing their daughter, right? And so my instruction for the dads, I gave them 12 questions, because that's what good Aggie people do, is 12, right? So 12 questions, and all those things where it's like, thank you for sharing that. Tell me more about this, right? There was no suggestions, right? There was no kind of fixing. It was just sitting there listening for 30 minutes, which halfway through at about 15 minutes, it was hilarious, because it was torture for those dads, right? Because they're 7-year-olds, 9, 10, whatever, it's 60-year-olds sharing all these things, I'm sure, about like house and school and all this. And of course, we love our kids so much, we want to fix it, right? And so what tended to happen by the end of the 30 minutes, when they spent time just asking questions, is the 7 to 11-year-old daughters were in their dad's legs. And the older teens, right, so in the teens, had their head on dad's shoulder. And dad didn't fix it. That was super eye-opening to me, right? That if we, as we are thinking about going through each one of these, if we don't spend time doing one of those most important things called listening to them, guess what they have a hard time doing with us? Listen. Right? So we think they're not good listeners, but you have to kind of flip that maybe for a moment and go, am I listening to their heart? Even though they're not listening for my words, right? And so we have to be aware of that as we think about the transition points here.
This one is where you want to focus. You always want to know that begin with the end in mind, is that here, right here, is where you want to get, and then this lasts over and over. It just keeps going. And what happens is once they become adults, is that they become your counselor and you become theirs, right? So then you're both going to each other to listen and to collaborate together. Because one of the really unique things about having children is that they are in the same family system that you are. So as they become adults, they have the same experiences that you had in this time that they were children. And so you guys can talk together about ways that your family can improve, or you can talk about the things that are coming up. But this role continues, and so you want to pour like so much effort into moving towards this as they grow in age.
Yeah, I think the important part, which is, beside, I think, if you like to fill in the blanks on your, little notes, which I'm not, she is. So, but the under counselor is responding when invited, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's a vital piece that's a lot different than the first one, right? In the teacher part.
Yeah. So this one, like if I have somebody that comes in the counseling center, it's not because I called them and said, hey, I really think you need counseling, so I have a 1 o'clock available. No, they're the ones that initiated that, and they're the ones that called to make an appointment. This one, I try to think about more like a basketball coach. I'm not going to be on the court with them. And then this, I always just kind of think of school, is that you're instructing. So when you think about each of these roles, and you think about the ages of your children, and the ages are approximate of where they kind of land, but think about just for a moment and reflect just to yourself is, am I in a role that's consistent with their physical, mental age? Like, which role am I actually filling at this point? And are there changes that need to be made? Or am I pretty happy about where I am? Or where we are as a couple with our children?
I think it's, as you're processing that and working through that, so we have 4 kids. Didn't sound a lot, but then it felt like I only had a 2 a newborn, and then, we wait a little bit. But man, it felt like a lot of parenting in different places it was happening at the same time, right? So really, this idea of like that transition point, and when you're transitioning in between each one, you have to consider each child is totally different, right? So we have an electrical engineer. We have one that's about to graduate what they're doing their marriage or family therapy, right? So that's a little different, right? Our son might, if he was the counselor, he might be the worst ever, right? Our daughter might be the worst, engineer, that's it. And hallelujah, they're different because God gifted them completely different. Therefore, parenting is going to happen completely different. And each stage is going to look completely different. But if we have a standard, right, that's the full idea. If our awareness with each child and their where they are emotionally, spiritually, physically, it sure helps, right? Probably the most important piece in this whole deal that we're going to continue to say is really the work is not with them, is with me, right? Is making sure what are my barriers sometimes of doing this. Now, we talked about before, and is sometimes we think of parenting, if we think of it as like a slingshot, it can do one of two things, right? So I know that there is, throughout the years of our parenting, we've read lots of books, and there's lots of different philosophies and approaches, like make your kid really independent later on, and when they're like 6 months old, make them make their own meals, but there's this idea of making them independent versus keep them close, and there's all these different approaches, right? And so it's overwhelming a lot of times, to read all these different perspectives. But there's, throughout the years, I think the thing that we have seen not only in our own family but also in walking beside other families is there is this notion that if you push them out too fast, there is this slingshot effect. Because what happens with a slingshot, it's going to come right back to us, right? I think we're experiencing that in our culture, is that we wanted to make our kids really, really independent. A lot of that's because you have to wonder, is that because that was easier on me, right? Don't know. It can be different, but now, I mean, appropriate to this, teacher, coach, counselor, if you pull it close, right, and then release it, then guess what happens? They launch, right? And that's this idea of making sure that it's done appropriate, making sure that mom and dad are at the right place when we're doing this.
So we have a slide that we want to make sure that you see, and that we talk about. Problems happen when you don't move through these different roles as parents. And what tends to happen is that it draws out that their physical age and their emotional growth are off. Okay? So you think about it like steps like this, okay? So if I was to put a 1, a 2, and a 3, when you have an infant, how do they express that they're not doing well? Bro, they cry, right? They cry. They can feel their emotion in their body, okay? And they do that. And we look at them and they're crying, and we know, hey, that's all you can do right now. And so here, I'm going to take that you're crying and I'm going to attend to your needs, right? And we're not upset with them. We're not, because that's what they're supposed to do right then, right? Okay. Fast forward, 5-year-old. They're not feeling well, or their foot stepped on, or anything, fill in the blank. What is our expectation of what they're going to do? Yeah. So I can say my feeling. We no longer have this expectation that they're just going to scream and scream and scream and scream until we guess what's wrong with them. We say, okay, we can feel it in our body, but then we can say what we're feeling, right? The next level is I can choose to help myself or get help. Okay? So when we get in this warning zone and we haven't moved through these roles, it's highlighted when kids don't have emotional intelligence. Okay? Now, this is a really sophisticated process in the brain about being able to feel the emotion and then say, oh, I'm feeling angry. Wait, it's not angry. Let me think more sophisticated than that. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling dismissed. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this person know that is making me feel this way and what we can do to help so that I'm not feeling that way anymore. But that's a really sophisticated process. I mean, move up and down those stairs over and over as things happen to us and you have different experiences. Well, when we don't move into teacher, coach, and counselor roles appropriately, it gets highlighted when our kids, or ourselves for that matter, are not emotional. It can't move up and down those stairs. So an example of that might be, okay, we're really in the coaching stage. Let's say we're 10, okay? And I'm mad, my child is mad that they didn't get chosen to be on the basketball court, okay? And they throw down their jersey or they throw the ball across the room or whatever. It is highlighted that they can't say what they're feeling and then talk to their coach to feel better, right? All they can do is feel in their body. And sometimes they learn that from their parents. And so then you have a child that can't walk up and down the steps, and you have a parent that's also stuck right here. And then it just creates an explosion. Okay? So what your job is, like what Shaun's talking about, is it's your job to work on going up and down these steps. And when you go up and down those steps, then your child will learn to do that. Now, let's say you have an adult child and you're not in that opportunity to be in this teacher role anymore, and you're in this counselor role, but they're really right here. All right? And you're also right here, and you're going to have to work. And so you start modeling for them. If you feel aggravated, you start modeling for them, I'm feeling, and then you let them know. And it's like you've got to say it out loud. You're saying it out loud for them, and you're saying it out loud for yourself. When you notice that they're angry, you can say, oh, out loud, you're feeling, fill in the blank. What could I do to help you? Is there anything I can do to help you? Or is there any way I can support you? What's your plan? Moving up and down this is a hard skill to master if you weren't modeled it as a child and you didn't learn that.
So one of the things, as you'll see on here on our notes, staying in that teacher coaching mode whenever it needs to be in that next one. So those three blanks there, which is exactly, just to put words to that, there becomes, just intense power struggles, right? It begins all of a sudden, what's going on here? Why is there a transition? Some of that is because we have to be aware and help them understand what's going on. Now we're going to go into coaching. Now we're in that. The second one there is emotional distance. When we're not connecting, needs to be on that next one. All of a sudden, it's like, man, I feel like there's such a gap between my kid and I. My sweet child that I held them, when they were so many pounds, and now they're pushing me away. What's going on? There could be lots of different reasons, but it'll be really good to look at the different roles. And then it shuts down communication, right? If I'm stuck in the teaching mode and they're now a teenager, that's kind of weird, right? When you're like, hey, you need to go do this. And then they begin to throw out words that trigger you, like whatever, Dad. Woo! Because for me, being disrespectful is my button. I don't know what your button is, but that was throughout my parenting experience. That was mine. And so whatever you do, don't do that.
What did you do when you pushed your buttons?
Well, like most of us have experienced, some kiddos push that button differently, but I had one in particular that fought just like me, and therefore pushed buttons just like me. And so we found ourselves, there was a couple of different things, and Emily and I actually had to come up with a plan with this, because when she would use my words, and then I would say this, she's like, well, you're doing that to me. And this was later on, and so I found myself kind of in this more teaching, like, you don't need to do that, you don't need to talk to me like that, right? Which there's some truth in that, but how I did that, I think could have been more of a coach rather than a teacher, right? So when we started escalating, there's a couple of different things. I had to recognize what was going on with me and how we actually transitioned that point, because we argued for a good probably 2 years. That was just like, we feel disconnected, we feel distant, and we were not communicating well, right? And so finally, we had to come up with a plan where Emma and I, different kids push us differently, right? And so one of our kids argued more like her, one of our kids argued more like me, and then we did the same, where we try to help each other out. So that's it. right? Whenever I started like talking with this daughter, we started like, and she started to see me escalate, she would go. So and vice versa, because anything else with our kids, our kids are brilliant. So they're like, oh, like, I know. You can't do that. You got to make it like.
You have to be like really sneaky.
Yeah. So then at that point, that was a signal for me to pause, and then we go back and say, hey, I'm going to talk to your mom about this, make sure we're on the same page, and I'm going to come back and talk to you.
And so it's really important. Like if I'm like, I have to do it pretty softly. Yeah, he's not going to go, wait, are you trying to call me out? He's not going to say that. It's his job to put the brakes on for himself. It's not my job to be like, Shaun, you're being so, So all I'm saying is I'm just trying to give just like that, like stick in the wheel, like, hey, let's just break the pattern for a second. And I'm just going to kind of give you like a, ooh, and so then, but then it's his job to say, you know what? I think I make better decisions when I'm not upset. And so Mom and I are going to take a break and we're going to talk about what we're going to do about this. Here's a great line you can use. If you don't have to always know what to say as a parent. You can say, I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this, but we're going to do something. Try not to worry about it. And then you go ahead and go, and you guys can have your conference of what you're going to do. When you do that, sometimes parents, they want to always have the answers, right? I always want to have the answer. Sometimes the best thing I do is think about it and not have an answer. And so if you can say, I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this, so I'm going to do something about it. And you say it in like the calmest voice you can muster up. Try not to worry about it. And then you just go ahead and go and take a break. I drew this car up here because I didn't want to forget. We drove here in cars, right? Unless you walked. We drove in a car, right? When we get here, how smart is it for me to open the engine and touch the engine? Why? It's awesome. It's hot. And you're going to get burned. I know I'm going to get burned, right? But if I know, my engine's making a weird noise, you know what? I'm going to go inside and I'm going to wait 30 minutes and I'm going to come back out. Then I can touch the engine, right? Because then it's safe and it's not hot anymore. Well, the same's true with our kids. Physiologically, when you start just getting all riled up, that, you've got your prefrontal cortex and you've got your amygdala in here, and see how right here they're connected. This amygdala and this prefrontal cortex. So this is my thinking part of my brain, and this is the part that's the fight, flight, freeze. They're connected right here, but when I start to get agitated and upset, this amygdala is going to just it's going to blow up because that's its job, right? And that's the way it's made to do it. But see how there's no connection anymore? There's no connection because I've flipped my lid. You guys have probably heard that, right? You flipped your lid, there's no connection. And this guy, this amygdala, he is in control and he's there to protect you. And he's there to protect your child. So if you're upset and your child's upset, this is not a good idea because nobody's making any kind of really great choices. So something you can say is think about the car and think about is it a good idea to open the hood right now? Or do I need to calm down and you need to calm down and then we need to come back and then we can make productive decisions that we're both proud of. Don't touch a hot engine because nobody's thinking. Nobody's thinking.
All right, we got 5 minutes.
5 minutes. All right.
Yeah, we could probably do 2 more classes.
That's right.
And I think if we're going to kind of go through this, and if you're a blank person, get a bunch of...
Then you can't do the run-on flax in there.
My life is going to be unresolved. I'm sorry.
But you can look in the back and there's the answers.
Are they?
Yeah, they are. I looked because I knew we wouldn't do all.
Yeah. Praise the Lord.
So you might be thinking what can we do? And so what we want to really start for you guys to start thinking about is that this second order change, you can make a generational impact. It doesn't matter what your kids are doing. It doesn't matter what your grandparents are doing. That you can make a generational impact and you have power to do that. You start to trash some things. You start having conversations together to trash some things, some behaviors that you're doing. You start learning how to write with your left hand. You can do it. You start to recycle some things. Start talking about what your family patterns are. Start talking about what you like and dislike about your parenting. Be honest with each other. That's where you start, and you make one change. You can make a list of all the things that you want to do. Pick the easiest one. Whatever one feels like, hey, we could actually do that, pick that one. Don't try to pick the very best one that would make the most impact on the family. Just pick the smallest one and have a small win. If your children are adults, let them know, hey, I'm going to start doing some different things. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm trying to do some different things. And I can see that I have not made choices that I'm very proud of. And I want to make a new choice. And so I just wanted to let you know that we're going to do some new things. Okay? If your kids are little, you can tell them the same thing. You say, we're going to write down some family rules. We're going to write down some family rules. Let's all work together on those. You guys can do a different thing. Just like we talked about in the first class, you got Abraham, you got Isaac, you got Jacob, you got his son. Somebody had to make a change, right? So why not let it be you? Why not do something different today, right? Because we only have so much time available. Do something. Because if you keep doing the same thing, then you can listen to all these words. And if you do the same thing, tomorrow the same thing's going to happen.
No, I'm going to say just that I think I led in the world that I led today. I mean, for my own personal walk with the Lord is because I hate to do this, to encourage somebody up, but we have a high sarcastic, So anyways, when he was, he grew up and there's lots of probably, you could tell his story, probably some things they didn't want to continue on in your family. There's a few things. And so my mom and dad said, hey, we're going to, kind of what we're saying, we're going to recycle some things, but we're going to throw some things in the trash. And I would say the number one thing is they begin to follow Jesus with everything they are. And that was transformational in how they did parenting, how they stayed connected with us, and how we saw that Jesus was real. It just wasn't a practice or a knowledge, but it was life. And I think that's the generational change that is making, because you can go to church and you can attend on a regular basis, but that doesn't mean that you have a personal relationship with Jesus, right? I mean, that's my first question in counseling, tell me about your spiritual walk. A lot of people will say, I go to church here. And then I'll ask the question again, tell me about your spiritual walk with the Lord, right? And so we have to, as we are transforming and want to make a change for the next generation, I mean, I live in that. I mean, I believe that is something that we continue on to this next generation. Yeah.
Yep. However far you get, here's where your parents got you to, right? And for some of us, it's here, and some of us, it's here, and we have all different levels. But wherever your parents got you to, right? That's your ceiling. And that's their ceiling. It becomes your basement. And then you have a choice to stretch that and give your kids a different life, right? And so then here, this that you got to your ceiling, that becomes where your kids get to start, right? So you can make an impact. You have more power than you think you do to make an impact for, maybe you're working for it for your grandkids. Maybe you're working for it, maybe it's not going to come out for a few generations. But whatever it is, it makes a difference. So you can choose to do something today to make it better for the people coming on down the line. Because isn't that the whole point? Isn't that the whole point? Is we're just trying to get closer and closer to God, right? So take a step and do something. Even if all you're doing is stretching a little bit, it's going to be worth it.
Okay. Last thing, then we'll pray. Just like we were talking about those, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the generations that follow, there's so much. I mean, we listed all the fears, right? We listed all the difficulties, and we can probably connect with some of those. One of the things that I just want to encourage all of us to, no matter where we are in before kids, young kids, teenagers, to grandparents, that being bold in truth, like allow for your family system just to be a a place of truth and confront anything that is in secrecy, no matter how small it is, because that little piece of secrecy, it alters the way that we do things. And so I just want to encourage each one of us to be bold in these things. Yeah.
When you read that, that's
Generational impact happens when families tell the truth about their patterns and testify to how the Lord has worked through there. That's not a one-time conversation. That's maybe a weekly in different ways, different kiddos at different times. Keep having those conversations. Our prayer always is that we are and again, second order change happens in our relationship with Jesus, right? The fruit of the Spirit does not happen if Jesus is not center, right? We have to live in good. So let's pray. Father God, just once again, allow this information be yours. Allow us to always go to Scripture, which is the truth. It has transformed generations previous and generations to come. Allow us to learn from the past, to be aware of the present, and make decisions to change what needs to change for the generations to come. Allow us to be a change agent in our families. It's in Jesus we pray. Amen.